knitting up Easter egg dishcloths. Hello, I'm Kristen from Studio Knit. Welcome back to my channel. Today we are knitting up two different sizes I have for you. There's a smaller one as well as a larger version. My materials, I'm using cotton yarn, straight knitting needles. I'm using size 7. We're also using a crochet hook today, scissors, and tapestry needle. I have the complete written pattern available on my website, so you'll want to make sure to get that because I am not going to bore you going row by row. I'm going to show you the specific techniques that we're using. We begin by casting on. You can either start with our beloved slip knot, or you can use that no slip knot method that I shared with you recently. I will have a link to that for you. Now, I'm going to be demonstrating the smaller version, and when you get that written pattern, it also has a chart. You'll see that we're starting out with 11 stitches right here. And the first row is simply the knit stitch. Now, if you're tackling this project, this probably is not your first time doing the knit stitch, but I'm going to share every single little technique available for you here. So the knit stitch, this is a garter stitch pattern, and we just start out row 1 with the knit stitch. On row 2, we jump right into our increase section. And so we're doing the KFB knit front and back increase. So I'll show it to you twice. Here we are doing knitting. That's the knitting to the front. And then you take your needle all the way back and you knit into that stitch right there. And you take your working yarn, you knit that because we are increasing from 1 stitch to 2, and this is going to be right slanting because we're increasing our egg from the bottom portion up to a larger middle portion of our egg. After you knit the next stitches at the end, you have one last KFB. So we are knitting the front, and then we take our needle around to the back. Now, I have individual technique videos on all of these, so if you would like to spend a little bit more time on some of these techniques that are new to you, I will have links to those for you as well. And then you just follow along in the pattern. On the smaller version, our final increase row is row 14. And then we have just a lot of nice knitting rows to go in the middle. And if you'd like to change yarn color, you can do so at any time, but I recommend always doing it at the beginning of the right side of your work. So that would be the odd number rows. And why you want to do that is that you don't want to have those purl dash lines in the front of your work. You want to have all of those in the back. And if this is also a new concept to you, I have a specific video all about purl dash lines, but I'm going to show you here that how pretty it looks when we always change our yarn colors at the front of our work. So here I am doing the wrong side and finishing up this just one little row of green. And now I am ready to change my yarn color again. And so I'm going to change it this time to purple and get just really creative with changing your yarn colors however you'd like. Again, always do so on the front of your work right before you start an odd number. So here's how the purple is knitting up, and I'm going to switch one more time with a yellow color right here and just sort of make my Easter egg personalized just for me. It's looking really good, and we are now at row 23, which is time to decrease already. The first is SSK, that's slip, slip, knit. So you slip one stitch, you slip it again. I need to sort of pull my work down a bit on the right, and I put my left needle in, and then I take my working yarn around and knit right on through. And that is a left slanting decrease, the SSK. You just knit all the way down to the very end until you have 2 stitches remaining. And we're going to decrease again, this time with K2 together. So that's knitting 2 together. So you just take those 2 stitches. This one's easier than the SSK, I think. And you just knit those 2 stitches together right here. And I'm using cotton yarn, and that doesn't stretch very well. Let's do it one more time. So we have the SSK. There's a slip. Here's another slip. And then I like to pull my work down a little bit to make room for that left needle to get right in there. Take my yarn around. And this is another decrease on row 25. And then I again am knitting all the way down to the end of the row until I have those 2 stitches remaining, and we're going to decrease K2 together. And this is right slanting so that we have a nice shape. And as you can see, this yarn is not stretchy at all. So you kind of have to tell that yarn what you want it to do, get those needles in there, knit it through, and continue the decrease pattern according to the written pattern. I also have that chart, and the chart is really helpful if you want to sort of plan out your colored stripes in advance. So then at the very end, on the small version here, after row 45, it's already time to bind off. And binding off, I'm just doing a very simple bind off. Again, I have links to all of these techniques if you'd like a little bit more time with each, but this is a pretty standard one. If you have done any knitting projects, you have had to bind them off to get them off of your needles, right? So we bind off all the way to the end of our work, and then we can cut our yarn with our scissors, get our tapestry needle, thread our yarn end through that, and then I like to just sort of slip my needle off and get that tapestry needle right on in there and do that weaving in process. Now you'll see the more you change yarn colors, the more weaving in fun you give yourself. So I am going to begin the fun weaving in process right here. I won't make you watch all of it. Just know that I'm enjoying every moment of it. Okay, so I'm on my final color here, weaving in this pretty lavender purple color, cutting it off. So for most projects, we'd be done at this point, but this egg has some real angular shapes that I want to fix, and it looks a little wonky. So what we're going to do is a very new technique here. We are going to take a crochet hook, and the one I have is about the same size as my knitting needles. And we're going to go around the perimeter of our egg to sort of give it a nice finished look. So we begin by taking our crochet hook, and we're going to be doing just a basic crochet chain. So from the front of the work, put your crochet hook right in there through that yarn ladder. And then you'll take your yarn. I'm going to use green around the edge. Just do a little loop like you do when you're changing yarn colors. Put it around your needle and then hook it to bring it to the front. So the green color we're bringing to the front, and this is how we're starting our crochet chain. Then we're going to take the crochet hook and put it through the left side right there. We take our working yarn, take it, wrap it around behind, and what is that? That's a counterclockwise direction. And then we hook it through, bring it to the front of our work, and then we have those 2 little green loops, and here is the chain part. You just slip it right through that first loop and we carry on. So let's do it a few more times together. So I'm going to put my crochet hook through my work, take my yarn, wrap it around from the back going counterclockwise, allowing the crochet hook to hook it, to bring it into the front of our work. And then we're going to make that chain by bringing it through our little loop. All right, so I'm going to carry on all the way around the perimeter of my Easter egg. And I'm just going to weave in my ends the same way I do for our knitting. So cutting my yarn and taking that hook off, and then just putting my tapestry needle right there through that last little loop and weaving in my ends on both yarn ends. We'll have 2 yarn ends here. So it's looking a lot better, but I'm still want to get more of an egg shape to it. So I am going to be blocking it. I'm going to be wet blocking it. Oh, here's how the back of our color changes look. And I'm going to go dunk this entire piece into water. So once it's thoroughly wet, I take my blocking mat and my little pins. Now I'm going to, with my fingers, of course with my fingers, we're working with our hands here, I'm going to shape it into more of an oval egg shape. So there are sort of some angular areas, and I want to sort of round those out. And since the yarn is wet, it is going to behave better than it does when it's dry. So you can really kind of stretch it out, smooth it out, and get it to the shape that you'd like. And then once you're happy with that, you can take your pins, pin it down onto your blocking mat. And I have a link to exactly what I'm using, all of the materials I'm using, I will link for you as well. And once it is totally dry, mine took about a day and a half to dry. You can go ahead and take all of those pins out, and you'll see that your piece holds its shape so beautifully. And here is the back of our work, a little messy, and the pretty Easter egg decoration here. I just love it. There is the larger version as well. The written pattern has instructions for how to do those row by row, and I hope you are inspired to knit up some Easter egg dishcloths of your own. Thank you so much for watching, and I will see you here next time. Bye!